Hello, denizens of YouTube. I have another video for you here of my forging journey. Today I'm going to be making a copper jewelry dish for my wife for our 7-year anniversary. So this is the first time I've ever forged anything. I haven't even had a class yet when I recorded this video. My anniversary was a few days before my first blacksmithing class, and I had everything set up, so I decided just to go for it. As you can see here, I didn't quite get it hot enough, and I'm using pliers. I'm not holding the workpiece. I'm doing everything wrong. But this entire YouTube series is about my learning process for figuring out how to be a smith. So I'm trying to draw it out here, and I think I finally get it hot enough here in a little bit, and then I actually start to be able to do some drawing out. So it got a little bit red there, and I think on this next heat, I'm actually going to get it. Yeah, there we go. Now it's getting red, but I don't drop my hammer. So now I'm actually drawing it out a little bit. This is a 3-pound antique hammer I have. It's a cross-beam hammer, and I'm really trying to draw it out. In a little bit, I'm going to change over to my ball-peen hammer, which is what I'll use to try to give it some texture as well as form it into a bowl shape. Now, normally to form something into a bowl shape, you use a swedge block. A swedge block is like an anvil that has these concave dips and things in it, so you can form it to different kind of curved surfaces. I, of course, being just starting out, don't have that. I do have a cast iron sauce pot that I'm going to try to use as a make-swift swedge bowl here. As you can see, I've got it rigged up with some jerry-rigged wood planks and a clamp, and it's just not an optimal solution, but it's the best thing that I have. So I'm going to move the very hot piece that I finally let it get really hot. I've switched over to actual tongs that I got from an antique store. I kind of have to cross the reins of it to get it to close on it. And I'm using the 2-pound ball peen from Vaughn, USA made, to try to peen this into that bowl shape. It's kind of working, but the jig just fell completely apart. So I'm figuring out that I can just hold the handle of the pot and hit the workpiece, and that actually works better. Just give up the tongs, there you go, and just peen it into that bowl shape, and it'll get into the shape that I want it to get into. And here's why I'm hot hand. Ow! Even with welding gloves on, that workpiece is probably 1,000 degrees, and those gloves are not meant for that. Ow, ow, ow. So yeah, that's another reason why I'm Hot Hand Luke. That was a name kind of thought up by some of my friends as a joke because my last name is Luke, and of course play on Cool Hand Luke, but also because I burn myself frequently in the journey to figure out how to be a safe smith. So, if you have some safety tips or advice, please leave so in the comments. But I have learned a lot since this about a month ago. Now, I do not touch the workpiece, of course. I put my tongs in a bucket of water while I'm heating the workpiece, and I leave the workpiece in the forge. I learned that by burning the back of my calf on those tongs while my workpiece was heating in the forge. But I've learned a lot now, and for a little while I was pulling down the cuff of my welding glove, and then I got some hot slag in there, and it burned my wrist right on top. Oh, nope, I learned my lesson. Not going to touch it. I almost did, but I'm not going to do it. So I'm continuing to just try to beat this thing into that. I did kind of touch it there, didn't I? There's another hot hand that I didn't catch. I'm got a basic bowl shape now that I'm kind of happy with, but I want to get some texturing in there to try to get some hammer marks. And that ball peen hammer is good for getting it into the swedge, but it doesn't really add a lot of texturing. So I'm going to switch over to a much smaller ball peen that's probably about ½ pound there. And that's something I got from my grandfather. It's a Legacy Luke hammer. We called him Pop Luke. But that's probably been around since the 1950s. He was a big engineer and woodworker, so that was one thing that I requested from the estate and was able to get. So I'm happy to have tools with a legacy. But I'm trying to add some of that hammer mark texture in here, and it's kind of working. It is, and I'm really actually surprised how much this cast iron pot is working as a swedge block, as a makeshift swedge block. Considering those things cost between like $200 and $600 that I've seen on like Holland Anvil. Oh yeah, and I instinctually try to reach down and grab the tongs with my ungloved hand, and of course burned it. Another hot hand moment. And that's the good bullshit that I've got. Now I didn't record it on here, but I went to further take those tips those square tips, and round them over the anvil to turn them into feet. And I also got 2 pieces of stock. The first bowl I gave to my wife, and she loved it, even though it was very rough and wabi-sabi. But it it was a little rough. So I took the lessons learned, and after my first class, I said to my wife, "Hey, I've got a second piece. I'm gonna make you another one." So this is actually the second one that I'm working on now. So it's, if you can believe it, this is a little more refined than the first one that I worked on. I'm cleaning it up now with some wire brushes and a drill. Of course, you can get these for a grinder, but for copper, I would just destroy it if I tried to use a grinder on here. So I'll change over here to a little bit to a wire wheel, and I think that works a lot better, getting down into all those texture marks and nooks and crannies. And you can see I did some hot stamping engraving here, a heart J. That's me and my wife, and our anniversary. But yeah, the wire wheel seems to work a lot better. It gets it really shiny, and I really liked how that ended up looking. But do use safety measures with this. I'm wearing a respirator when I do this because a lot of that slag is coming off as dust and you can breathe it in. And I was using a glove on the hand that I was holding it on for a while, and I went to no gloves. But I'm holding in the vise there when I'm doing no gloves. So safety is very important, even though I'm not wearing a glove now. But the drill is a lot less powerful than a wire wheel on a grinder if you've ever used that before. So if you hit yourself with that, it's not as big of a deal. But it's still going to shoot off little pieces of wire also. So make sure you're wearing eye protection. And now I'm changing over to a buffing wheel. This is just, I got a 3-size buffing wheel from Harbor Freight that works in drills. It's a lot less terrifying than the bench buffers that I've seen people use that you can launch a sharpened knife across the room with. So I think it turned out pretty well, especially with the buffing. I put a little of the buffing compound that it came with on here. This is the smallest wheel. In some later videos, I've used the bigger wheel for knives. That worked out pretty well. And I think that shined out pretty good. I have some of the hammer marks in there. You can tell it's handmade and made with love. It's shabby chic wabi-sabi. But here's the first one I made. That's the really rough one. It actually got too hot and melted a little bit because copper has a lower melt point than steel, of course. And we're going to move on to the second one that I did. So that's my progression. So it is actually better, I promise you. But thank you, like, subscribe, and all that stuff if you want to keep watching my journey as a blacksmith. All right, thank you very much for joining me.